I'm here with Trevor Gaunlett from Gaunlett Consulting.
Trevor Gaunlett.
Trevor Gaunlett Consulting. I'll get to make sure I get the whole name in. And we're just going to do a bit of a generic walk and talk, talk about some of the emerging industry trends, some of the cool stuff that we've seen at the expo, and yeah, we'll kind of do a bit of a walk and talk session. All right, cool. So Trevor, have you seen any kind of, I guess, like emerging technologies or trends that you've sort of seen at the show here that kind of, I don't know, maybe stand out to you a little bit?
Yeah, so you're talking really about technology push, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, there's some really good stuff. I think I'm allowed to mention the odd company name, aren't I? I mean, obviously there's the Neol Copper Technologies, but I really like there was a presentation this morning about graphene.
Oh yeah.
And some innovative learning there, I think, about what the role of graphene is in wear protection. And one of the key phrases was something like, it's not really about friction reduction, it's about increased compression or increased power output.
Yep.
So that kind of thing, I think, is really, really interesting, because you've got two different technologies that have a certain degree of commonality, talking about filling the gaps between asperities and basically presenting a smoothish surface. Obviously, what happens after that becomes quite different. So as far as technology push is concerned, I think that's a really interesting one. Of course, we're very, very close to one of my favorite subjects that I've been, I've done on my podcast. So I get my podcast mentioned about heavy Group 2s, or heavy Group 2 from ExxonMobil, which I think is also potentially got an enormous potential for impacting in the market from a technology push perspective. But you've also got to look at market pull, and I think you can have any kind of wonderful technology, but if the market doesn't want it, if the market doesn't require it, and increasingly, of course, if legislation and regulation don't really force it upon people in some cases, then it's not going to work. So the theories around activities around decarbonisation and sustainability, those themes are also very important here.
Yeah, right. And have you seen anything kind of like around the stands and that, which is maybe like surprising to you, whether it's technology or market trends or anything like that?
One of the things that I see most here at Lubricant Expo is sort of probably catching in the background as we're walking around here, is the number of booth visits.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you do. Yeah. Let's be realistic. You do get sometimes. You've got a booth, and the only people who are standing there are the people from the company. But there's an awful lot of people sitting down and looking like they're talking seriously about business. And the quality of interaction seems to be absolutely enormous. And I've had that feedback from a couple of people over the last, we're a day and a half in now, whereby people are saying, we're having really, really good conversations. Sometimes we're having conversations with people that we've not had conversations with, recently. So I think that's really great. So collaboration seems to be a really big thing here.
And so one thing that's kind of maybe surprised me a little bit is the number of representatives from OEMs that I've seen kind of on the floor.
Right.
Not necessarily with stands.
Yeah.
How are you thinking about, let's say, the collaboration between OEMs and lubricant manufacturers, and seeing how sort of like the technology is starting to evolve a bit more sort of together in some ways?
I think collaboration is really, really important, as long as it's captured the value. If you've got an OEM or you've got a tier one supplier who's talking to a lubricant manufacturer and or an additive supplier, then most of the time they are bringing different levels of expertise to that collaboration. So you're getting a diversity of thought. which is, just about everybody says diversity of thought is a really good thing. Yes, okay, you have now a lot of OEMs where they have lubricants people in position. Didn't happen 20 years ago, as far as I can remember. And of course, a lot of lubricants people are, say, mechanical engineers or chemists, but that mechanical engineering interface where, the lubricants company or the additive suppliers got a mech eng graduate and a really experienced person in there. So I think taking that diversity of thought and also the complementary experiences and backgrounds is really, really important to produce something fruitful. And again, we come to collaboration. It's got to be underpinned by trust. And so I think the trust that you have between those companies is enormous. The data sharing, and of course you're getting seeding, if you like, of good practices between completely different cultures quite often.
Yeah,
it's all beneficial.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's really interesting. I was speaking with one of the reps from one of the major gas engine manufacturers yesterday, and what was interesting to see from him was that he kind of was viewing lubricants as being part of the machine. So in their next generation of engines, they're actually designing the lubricant and they're designing the next generation of engine at the same time to make sure that they kind of work together. And that's maybe a conversation that I hadn't heard 10 years ago.
I wrote it down in my notebook when he said he's going to put it on the slide. I thought, that's significant.
That's a really interesting development.
Yeah.
So how about kind of, as you look around, you've already mentioned like the sort of the cultural melting pot, if you like.
Yeah.
We've got representatives here. There's from Africa, from Asia. Obviously, it's very European dominated. But how do you see kind of the effect of globalization as it's affected kind of the industry? Like, obviously, it's a combination of innovation, but also in some ways some supply chain challenges and things like that. How do you see globalization kind of shaping the industry?
Right. I go back sort of 20 years in my career when globalization began, and it was sort of forced on the oil companies by the major international OEMs. And yes, you've touched on some of the downsides in terms of supply chain issues, particularly over the last 5 years. But one of the things that I think is starting to grow out now, or which we're starting to see now, is actually the niches that globalization left behind. I'd say the big guys grew up and became, up here kind of thing. There was an awful lot of little niches that maybe their local operating companies or their local operators had in there, which have then had to be filled. And though you're starting to see a variety of suppliers where globalization's taken the big boys out of certain niches, and those niches are now being filled.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And we'd be remiss if we didn't talk to some degree about energy efficiency as part of that sustainability story.
Yeah.
So, are you seeing more conversations around the role that lubricants have in that sort of energy efficiency, or how are you seeing, I guess, everyone in this room doing their part to improve energy efficiency in, let's say, mechanical interfaces?
Okay. I'd like to take that to a different word. I mean, the word that I tend to focus on is decarbonisation.
Yeah.
Yes, sustainability is important, but sustainability means different things to different people. That's one of the obvious things that's come out of the last couple of days. It still means different things to different people. But if you start looking at decarbonisation, then obviously things like product carbon footprint being important. One of the things that I've been interested in over the last couple of years has been the maritime industry's decarbonisation process, what kind of inputs that's going to have on the lubricants industry. If they put up sails on decks of ships, it's going to be more greases that are of ocean going that can basically withstand saltwater environments, and they're going to be critical to the propulsion system, not just the on-deck cranes. So I think decarbonisation is a driver, and the thing that we've got there is you've got sustainability, but sustainability is often seen as a cost. Decarbonisation and benefits, I think, are much easier to articulate there, because you can articulate quite often bottom line benefits straight away. On energy efficiency means reduced fuel consumption. On a sustainability angle, then of course wear protection and extended oil drains, they pay for themselves fairly quickly. Extending equipment life is obviously very important from a sustainability perspective as well.
Yeah. So it's really cool in that sort of discussion. It sounds like what you're talking about is not only can lubricants be the enabler of energy efficient technologies and the like, but it's also like a key component of some of the kind of sustainable technologies that we'll need to get us to net zero, right? So when you're talking about like the sails requiring grease, it sounds like everyone in this room kind of has their part to play in that sort of that transition.
Yeah, absolutely,
pretty exciting.
Yeah. I think it's immensely exciting. The rate of change is ridiculous.
Yeah.
To use an overworked word, and the rate of change is happening in so many different directions. For me, as sort of an observer, like you, an observer of what's going on, this is really, really exciting, because no one organization could go in all these directions at the same time. So they've got to commit somewhere. And I think it's really interesting to see the observations, the developments of the companies, the developments of the markets, to try and help when you're talking to clients to say about where are the winners going to be here. It's a really, really important time. And we look around us. I heard yesterday somebody said 4,000 people registered here, and it's twice the size that it was last year. And there's a real buzz because everybody's got to get things done, which brings us back to collaboration, because everybody, basically, we can't do it by ourselves.
Yeah.
So we've got to find partners, and these partners are quite often new people. And whether it's an additive company that needs an upstream supplier or wants to work downstream with a lubricant or a grease manufacturer, it's really good to see the number of grease manufacturers who are here, for example. Then or whether, as you say, there's OEM people walking around, there's OEM people in the presentations, and you come at the end of the presentations and who gets jumped on?
Yeah.
The OEM guy.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, Trevor, for all your insight. Guys, if you haven't already been to the Lubricant Expo in either Dusseldorf or North America, make sure you come check it out, because there are just so many people here to connect with. There is also a Lubricant Expo Middle East that's happening in 2026. Right. So definitely get signed up for that as well. And yeah, encourage you to come along.